Welcome, everyone.
Hello there.
Everybody, thanks for coming today. Give everybody just a few more minutes to gather in here. All right, it is noon, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and start off by saying welcome to everyone who's joining this event. Appreciate you all being here. I am not Rachel Toll, our chapter chair and fearless leader. My name is Rachel Gessel. I am the treasurer for the Mid-South chapter of APMP, and I'm filling in for her today to facilitate this meeting for our great speaker, Jenna Young, who's going to talk to us in just a minute. I did want to provide a shout out to, if you're a member of our chapter, welcome. Thank you so much for being a member. We're happy to have you back in 2026. If you're not a member of our chapter, we'd love for you to join. You have to go into your account on APMP and designate us as your chapter. And if you do that, then you'll be able to have all the benefits of being a member, which include attending these meetings and getting regular invites, as well as having maybe the potential opportunity for in-person gatherings. We do have a drawing for a $25 gift card of your choice at the end of this event, as is our tradition, but we're going to do that offline today since Rachel Toll's not with us. She's usually the one that runs the drawing, but she said that she would do it after this meeting. She just needs a list of the attendees, and we'll get that to her, and she will contact you if you're the winner. So thank you so much again for being here, and without any further ado, we'll turn the time over to Jenna Young. She's the Director of Strategic Growth at Arlo Solutions, and we're excited to have her. Over to you, Jenna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. Let me share my screen. Give me just a minute here. All right, can you all see? Perfect.
Yes.
All right, well, we will dive right in then. Before I get started, let me just say I have a tendency to speak a little quickly. So if you all are like, slow down, please just put it in the chat. It doesn't offend me at all. When I'm excited, it starts flowing. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So today we will talk about errors to excellence, transforming common proposal mistakes into winning strategies. So like Rachel said, I'm Jenna. I'm the Director of Strategic Growth at Arlo, and I am very excited to be here with you all today. So a little bit about me. I've been in GovCon for a little over a decade now, within all elements of business development, capture, proposal management, and marketing, really helping teams craft proposals that don't just check boxes, because compliance is important, but also tell compelling stories. So with each win and really with each loss, I've learned something that I think is valuable about what the common mistakes are and how to avoid them. So I am looking forward to sharing those lessons with you today. So in this session, we will start off first by talking about the problem. So what are the most common proposal errors that plague even the most experienced teams? We'll explore the impact these errors have on evaluators and your win probability, followed up with some strategies for how to transform these errors into excellence. And then finally, we'll get tactical with some implementation approaches to ensure that these improvements become part of your future development process, and how to kind of weave those into what you've already got going. So let's start with the most crucial insight. Proposals really don't fail oftentimes on strategy, they fail on the execution of the strategy. So across the federal market space, and I think in the commercial market space as well, we really see execution errors undermining strong solutions. So government evaluators tell us directly that non-compliant, difficult to score proposals get eliminated almost immediately, regardless of their technical merit. And I think we all know that this environment, 2025, it was more competitive than at least I've ever seen in my career. So now even those little tiny errors can really cost you your win. So my personal experience, like I said, confirms this. The review feedback conversations I've had with various KOs at conferences, they all say that the clarity, the compliance, and the presentation quality really influence their perception of your proposal. And then the most successful teams invest as much in proposal execution as they do in solution development. It's not about just having this really strong solution. It's about how do you communicate the strong solution. So with that being said, I've broken up some of the most common mistakes into 5 categories, and then I follow up each mistake with a solution suggestion, and then from there we'll get even more tactical with implementation ideas. So mistake category number 1. This is misrepresenting or overlooking RFP requirements. So this is a fundamental mistake. Does not matter how good your proposal is. If you make this mistake, you're not going to be considered for award. So that can mean things like incomplete responses to eval criteria, missing or incorrectly formatting attachments, ignoring page limitations or formatting requirements, not addressing all of the sections and subsections, or overlooking amendment changes. These will all cost you a win. In fact, I think I saw this on LinkedIn. It was a company's blog post where it was a law firm, talked about there was a GAO case where a proposal was dismissed. It would have won, but the solicitation required the font Arial, and they thought that they could kind of cheat the system using Arial Narrow because it was still technically an Arial font, and they lost, and GAO didn't support their case. So that is, it didn't matter how good their solution was, the way that they communicated, it wasn't compliant. So it didn't count. So when you look at compliance failures, there's really one solution to that, which is a structured approach. So first, we need to create a detailed compliance matrix right at the beginning. I like to do 2-tiered matrices. So a high level one for leadership, like myself, where I can just go at the highest level and make sure that everything is checked off. So think like the overarching task level of the PWS, and then a more detailed one for writers. So think that like that second level, the descriptions of the tasks within the statement of work or performance work statement. And then map every requirement to specific sections and owners. And then you could even take it a step further if you wanted to color code by risk level. So for example, if it's a requirement that's maybe very verbose, have a lot of words, maybe flag that in red so you know, hey, this could be a compliance pitfall. They talk about a lot of things in this one sentence. So just to make sure from the beginning, you're keeping an eye on that. Second, implement section by section validation. So use a dedicated compliance person, ideally somebody not on the core proposal team. I know that's not always possible in small business settings, to be objective, to verify, and just create like a binary yes, no, like did this make it yes, no, there's no gray area in compliance. And then for Arlo and my team, I have a Sue compliance gates at each review. So when I assign like red team, pink team, red team, gold team, white glove, for example, I have someone reviewing the content just from a compliance perspective in that same binary yes, no, making sure that we check all of the boxes. Third, develop an RFP specific style guide and template. So what I do is we have, our base template that we use, our master response template. Before I outline anything, hand anything out, I update the styles within the template to the RFP requirements. So that way, right out of the gate, as long as nothing changes in an amendment, you're starting with a compliant template. And then fourth, establish a formal amendment procedure. So designate some sort of amendment control officer and implement stop work, put pins down when amendments arrive. So you can make sure you've documented and incorporated how each change affects your proposal. I don't know if anyone on this call worked on CIOSP4 or even Oasis Plus, but those were very compliance heavy submissions that had a lot of amendments. So something like this would be especially important and that type of proposal, really any GWAC or schedule proposal especially. And then finally, oh, sorry, I forgot to switch my slide. Finally, leverage technology. So deploy an AI-assisted compliance tool if you can, and try to automate those terminology checks. Implement digital scorecards for real-time monitoring throughout development. AI is a whole other conversation. I could talk about that for an hour straight, but there are a lot of ways just to use a simple chat GPT. Of course, you want to make sure you're not using the open chat GPT that anybody could use to just say, you know, hey, AI, here's my response, here's the requirement. Did I check all of the boxes? Remember, if you can't follow the RFP instructions correctly, why would evaluators trust you to follow the contract requirements? You're building that trust and that sense of excellence right out of the gate with your compliance. All right, so now let's talk about mistake number 2. This is all about clarity and communication breakdown. So if you don't have an unfocused message, you are going to confuse your evaluators. Remember, they are evaluating multiple proposals for oftentimes multiple RFPs under tight deadlines. So they can't sit there and decipher and figure out like, okay, did this map to this or this map to this? One thing I really like to do too is think of the table of contents as the government officials kind of like checklist so that they can make sure that everything is just easy to see. I know that's a little bit more of a solution, but just wanted to throw that out there. So put yourself in the evaluator's position. They've worked all week. It's Friday afternoon. Your proposal's the last one on the docket. If you haven't communicated clearly, if they open it up and see just a big wall of text, it's going to be hard for them to score that. They have that reader's fatigue. You know, you want to make it as easy as possible. So common clarity issues we encounter are dense, jargon-heavy text with minimal white space, passive voice, indirect language, buried key points and differentiators, inconsistent messaging or not one voicing, and then weak or just missing visual elements. You don't want your discriminator buried on page 37 in the middle of the paragraph where the evaluator is never going to find it. You might not even be able to find it. So you just want to make sure the most important things pop off the page. So the solution to this is practical methods. So my favorite is the 5-second rule. Make key points visible at a glance. They should pop off the page with bullets, call out points, typography, bold text, underline text. Place primary messages at the very beginning of each major section, and then use call out boxes or, like I said, typography for critical differentiators. Second, implement consistent heading hierarchy. So this kind of goes back to what I was just saying about, I like to think of the table of contents almost as the evaluator's compliance checklist, that heading hierarchy with 3 to 4 distinct heading levels and clear, consistent visual treatments will help you also convey your benefits more than just topics. And I also don't really like to go more than 4 heading levels deep, really 3, but sometimes it's hard not to go to that 4th one. And making sure that, you know, it's just easy to follow and that your heading structure aligns with the evaluation criteria. Third, use active voice with direct statements. So make sure you replace any passive constructions with clear subject then action phrasing. Don't use nominalizations, use strong verbs. Say we implement instead of implementation will be performed by. You get your point across much more clearly and much more concisely. And then try to keep sentences under 20 words or so for readability. And if you're going over 20 words because you have a list or whatever, try to use bullets if you can. And then fourth, let me see here. The next thing is develop standard graphics templates. So create consistent visual language with icons and symbols that reinforce your themes. You'll see throughout this presentation, I use a lot of icons. I really like icons. I like that I'm a visual person, so I think that tie-in is helpful. Design reusable frameworks for processes, flowcharts, and org charts. So for my team, for example, we have our standard org chart template. So all we have to do in a proposal jobs is take that design template, make sure we're using the font that the RFP says is okay. It's already branded to our colors, and then we just have to put the boxes where they go. So it's quick and it's consistent, and that helps the graphics stay well designed because we've already designed and developed them and used them in the past. So you can really, one, cut down your development time, and then two, you already have a tried and true template for communicating complex ideas faster than you would in text. And then finally, practice ruthless editing. So implement what I call the rule of halves. So my team, I have a few professionally trained writers that their first drafts are just long and dense. And when I go into it and I edit them for them, I first try to cut the content in half and then go back through and cut the content in half again to make sure that it's not redundant. You're saying the most critical points. You're only communicating the things that are crucial to your story. If you can, if your team is large enough, try to assign a dedicated editor that is just solely focused on clarity, and then create strict word count budgets or page count budgets for each section so that you're not too tempted to go over. And so you have a framework too that will help you not get into trouble with page count at the end. And as much as you possibly can, again, assuming most of you all are in a small business setting like me, conduct fresh eye reviews with your subject matter experts to test if your message is truly clear. I also like to take this one step further too and test my message with non-technical team members because the evaluators oftentimes aren't technical too. And for my current company, we operate in the cybersecurity realm where things can get pretty technical. And so I like to just have somebody who doesn't have necessarily an understanding, maybe understands it at a high level to review, because that's oftentimes what the decision maker has. So when you make your key points immediately visible and your content scannable, you're really respecting the evaluator's time, their cognitive load, and putting yourself ahead of the competition. All right, so look at mistake number 3 now. Our third critical error is making claims without compelling proof. This is like my personal pet peeve. Unsubstantiated claims, they don't just weaken your proposal, they destroy your credibility really with evaluators. So things like trust us, missing or irrelevant past performance details, my biggest pet peeve, quantitative claims without supporting metrics, disconnected features and benefits, or just failure to demonstrate a general understanding of the agency's challenge. So if you say something like, we have extensive experience implementing similar solutions, so what? You didn't really do anything there to give any proof to your claim. It just became an empty claim. If you say something like, we implemented the same solution at USDA and achieved this result, you've already put the proof and you've established that credibility. So the biggest solution to, excuse me, evidence-based proposals, creating evidence-based proposals is proof points. So first, this is one thing that my team uses AI for pretty heavily, is creating a centralized past performance database. So developing a searchable repository organized by agency, contract type, and solution area, include as many detailed metrics, customer testimonials. If you don't have AI, you can maintain evidence cards with pre-written verified descriptions that writers can quickly access and then update quarterly, because past performance isn't stagnant unless the contract is ended. So the way my team does this is we have a SharePoint library. Our AI tool has a SharePoint integration. So within SharePoint, we have one Word document for each past performance, each contract that has all of the contract details, all of the performance details, MSRs, MSR data, monthly status report data, client kudos, anything that is something we would want to be able to recite in a proposal just lives in that Word document. And it's not a pretty Word document. It's just a dump of information, because then it's integrated into our AI tool, which we can just ask AI, hey, where did I help USDA with their FSMA audit process? And it can go say, Arlo Solutions implemented this solution that increased USDA's FSMA audit score by this much in this amount of time. And so it really just gives you that information. You're just asking it a question because you've created that centralized database. Second, you can implement the CAR method. This is another one of my favorites. So thinking things in terms of challenge, action, result. I have really trained our subject matter experts to document the specific challenge that their customer is facing with the context. So then we can detail exactly what actions we took, how our actions were innovative, and most importantly, what the quantifiable result with metric was that directly tied into that customer's priority. So that is extremely helpful, and can also be tied into, like I said, the past performance, where you're just feeding that information into your past performance repository. So if you have an AI integration, all you have to do is go ask it that question. Third is develop customer-specific metrics library. So if you research and document agency-specific KPIs and success metrics, you can create visualization templates tailored to different customer types. You could maintain some type of metrics translation guide that aligns any commercial metrics if you're in the commercial marketplace with government value systems. Just be sure to verify all of the metrics before inclusion. Something kind of similar to this that I have our team do is our capture analyst is responsible for maintaining these customer profiles. So we have one for each of our top customer that includes things like just their common language that they use, words that they like to use, their mission statements, things like that. So again, we can just feed that to our AI tool and ask it to make sure that our proposal is mirroring those customer specifics. If you don't have AI, you can do that by hand. AI just makes it faster. So that's another tip I like to say. Fourth, let me switch my slide here, is use visual evidence validation techniques. So create hierarchies from strongest to weakest proof points, direct testimonials at the top, industry averages at the bottom, implement visual callouts that highlight verification methods, and where you can develop any type of evidence maps that shows the clear connection between the claim that you are making. We helped USDA with their FSMA audit process and the proof because of our process and how we helped them. Their letter FSMA audit letter score increased by a full letter in the face year of the contracts. And then finally, apply the so what test to every claim. I tell this to my team all the time. This is cool. Why do I care? Create review teams focused solely on value demonstration, implement mandatory benefit statements for all feature descriptions, and then train your reviewers to flag any claim that lacks substantiation or customer relevance. So remember, ultimately here, evaluators aren't scoring what you claim you can do. They'll score what you prove you've done. All right, and mistake number 4, our critical error here is failing to craft a compelling narrative. So many proposals really have just kind of a disconnect between technical capabilities and the cohesive story. This is really easy to do if you have multiple authors. So common storytelling failures include no clear value proposition or win themes, inconsistent or missing customer focus, technical information without context, or solution descriptions without an outcome emphasis, or really just a missing emotional connection to the agency's mission. So a common misconception is that government evaluators only care about technical compliance. While that's true in the sense that that's their first concern, that's kind of the go no-go criteria. They're also human beings who respond to clear narratives that connect the problem that they're trying to solve or their mission outcomes. So the solution to this mistake is strategic storytelling through narrative excellence. So First, if you can, develop a proposal-specific messaging guide, create theme statements tailored to each opportunity with supporting messages, map these themes directly to customer hot buttons, customer pain points, and customer language, develop specific section-specific messaging that reinforces overall themes, create message development maps showing exactly where themes could appear throughout the proposal. Second, create customer journey maps for each opportunity. So document the customer's current state with specific pain points. So visualize, I'm a very visual person, as you'll notice through this, visualize how your solution is going to enable their transition to a better state. You know, they're at X, they want to get to Y. How is your solution, that pathway that moves them from X to Y? Highlight key milestones, transformation points, and really connect both the emotional and practical benefits at each journey stage. Third, you can also implement the problem impact solution outcome framework. All of our past performance at Arlo is written this way. So training riders to explicitly state the customer's problem in their terms, not yours. Document the specific impacts on mission, operation, stakeholders, and then also present your solution, how it's directly mapped to those dimensions of the problem. And then finally, quantify the outcomes in terms of customer value and mission enhancement. You know, you save time, you got technology into the hands of the warfighter faster. Obviously, add the metrics behind that, but that's the customer value and the mission enhancement. Next, use visual storytelling techniques. This is some of my favorite stuff to do. So create before and after visualizations that demonstrate transformation. So you can say, you know, here's your current process and it's messy. There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of boxes, and here's our streamlined process right below it. So then you have that side-by-side comparison. This is where you're currently at, and this is where we're going to take you. Just make sure when you do that, your information hierarchies kind of guide evaluators through the narrative logically. And then finally, connect all content with agency mission statements. I've been saying this throughout, but I think it's so important that I wanted to still give it its own box. Create mission alignment matrices for each major proposal section. How does this section of this proposal tie into the customer's mission? Implement specific callouts that connect your solutions to mission language, and then train writers how to incorporate that mission terminology naturally. So find a word or two within the mission statement and make sure that word is reflected at a minimum in the understanding section of your proposal response. So just remember that technical compliance is what gets you considered, but compelling narratives is kind of what closes the deal. So evaluators need to see not just what you'll do, but why it matters to their agency's mission. All right. So our last mistake here before we get a little bit more tactical with our implementation is about ineffective proposal development processes. So I'm kind of a process geek. This is another thing I could spend a lot of time on. But really the issues here come down to last minute submissions with minimal review time. I hardly ever let these happen. Disconnected proposal sections written in isolation. Again, something that happens again when you have something that happens a lot when you have multiple authors. Inconsistent styles across writing teams, again, another multiple author issue. Ineffective color team reviews, you know, people who just don't participate or wait until the last minute, or from the proposal side, you didn't give them enough time to provide a thorough review. And then poor version control or document management. This isn't as issue as much as it used to be in my experience. Now that, you know, Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint and all that, you have that kind of connectivity. But back in the day where, you know, things were often printed and put on the wall in war rooms, that was much harder. So luckily technology has helped with that, but it's still important. So our fifth and final solution is process optimization through quality control. So even the best content can really be undermined by poor process execution. We need to implement stage reviews with clear entry and exit criteria. We need to establish specific quality gates with measurable acceptance criteria. So at each color team review, are we meeting the quality standards that we expect to? And if we're not, how do we get there? It could be in your gate reviews, and in your color team reviews. So create standardized review forms with weighted scoring systems, implement mandatory remediation periods or your, red team recovery, gold team recovery, and then develop escalation protocols for critical issues that threaten compliance and quality. Next, create a proposal development playbook. So in my company, I developed a very large chart format that goes phase by phase, following the Shipley phases. So it's the end-to-end process. Who's the owner of the process? What are their roles? What are their responsibilities? What are the deliverables at this time? What is the gate criteria? And then when you can, establish time box development phases with clear deliverables. Implement standard operating procedures for common proposal types. And the company I'm currently with, we do a lot of DoD work specifically from one customer within DoD, and you can tell every contract shop uses the exact same template for their RFPs. It's always the same volumes with similar requirements. So we've developed a standing operating procedure around those that helps guide the proposal team to make sure that they're hitting all the key elements. And then finally, create decision trees for handling typical challenges like late requirements or resource constraints. I use this a lot because I have some team members who sometimes want to go after things in the last minute, a week before they're due. And so we've created a decision tree to help funnel out some of those bluebirds. Third, establish cross-functional review teams. I think this one is super important because when you have reviewers from diverse functional areas, technical, contracts, pricing, operations, you really get the fresh eyes that you need from each reviewer who specializes in a specific perspective that the evaluation team is going to have. So you can implement paired review systems for balanced feedback. You can create review specializations. Like I said, I always have somebody dedicated reviewing for compliance. You could also have someone that's just checking the messaging or just checking the graphics or any other kind of critical element. All right. And then fourth, use collaborative tools for real-time development. We live in a world of technology and we should really use it to our advantage. So cloud-based authoring like Microsoft SharePoint with version control and change tracking, comment resolution workflows with accountability tracking. I don't ever delete a comment. We always mark it as resolve, and then I save a copy at each review cycle so we can always see the history of how content evolved. Create real-time compliance dashboards visible to all contributors. So we don't necessarily do this, but it's something that you could easily do, I think, with Power BI and SharePoint if you are a heavy Power BI user. And then you can now establish virtual war rooms using like Microsoft Teams or some type of dedicated collaboration channel for immediate problem solving, especially in today's world where like, for example, my team is all over. I've got some in the DMV outside of Washington, D.C. I live in Oklahoma City. I've got a proposal manager in Denver. So the days of, all coming into a room and putting your proposal on the wall and marking it up aren't really something we do anymore, but you can still do that same thing sort of virtually. And then finally, to the extent that you have it, apply AI-assisted quality control. So Arlo, we have an AI tool that we upload the proposal. It gives us a readability score. Ideally, your readability, you want it to be at about an 8th grade level. So it's not elementary, but it's also not super complex because remember, evaluators are reading a lot of proposals, so you want to make it easy on them. You can also use AI to do a terminology check, a compliance check. You can use predictive analytics within AI to ask it, what might be considered a high risk proposal area. There's all kinds of AI tools out on the market, or that can be used internally just through like ChatGPT that can help you. So just remember here, excellence is not accidental. It's the result of disciplined processes applied consistently across every single proposal. It's really just a culture of quality. All right, so now let's get a little bit tactical. We've covered 5 critical areas and their solutions, and I want you to leave today with specific tools beyond just those high-level solutions that you can immediately apply to your proposal quality. So first, look at compliance tools. You can do a compliance checklist template or derive this from your compliance matrix that provides a section by section validation framework to ensure nothing is missed. You can include common requirement identifications that will help you quickly spot shall, will, must statements in dense RFPs. And you can also build an amendment tracking system, like I said, for really complicated proposals like Oasis Plus or CIOSP4 or whatever will come after that, to help you prevent requirements from falling through the cracks when changes occur. An amendment tracking system doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be a Microsoft Excel where each tab is a single amendment and gives you a quick rundown of what was in the amendment, how that impacts your proposal, what changes you need to make, and what to just be on the lookout for potentially in future amendments. For communication clarity, you can develop a readability assessment framework, especially if you use AI, to analyze text complexity and suggest improvements, or just, evaluate your visual hierarchy to make sure your heading structure is designed in a way that gives you maximum impact. And then also a graphic design sort of branding guide or standard library template of graphics, so that when you are looking at your proposals and you have a lot of dense text, you know how you can transform that into a visually clear element for better communication. To strengthen the evidence in your proposal, I recommend creating an evidence library framework, really just a fancy way of saying a past performance documentation system that standardizes how you capture and present relevant experience. Like I said, for Arlo, the way that we do that is having a past performance library tied in with AI, and the past performance base file has all the contract details like period of performance, funding, contract type, KO and core information, all the things that are typically asked for in a proposal, plus a description of the tasks, stats from our monthly status reports, client kudos, all in one centralized repository. And then I also keep a proof point evaluation criteria to help assess the strength of our evidence before submission. So I try to make sure that I'm evaluating every proof point against a criteria of like low or like weak, moderate, strong, to say, okay, how strong is this proof point in terms of the agency's mission? And then for narrative development, so I use a win theme development worksheet. It starts off by describing, okay, what's the customer's mission at the highest level? How does this agency fit within the department? Again, this is from a federal perspective. And what is the role of the agency within the department? And then you just continually go more granular and more granular. Okay, this is their mission statement. Okay, what is this RFP supporting within the mission? What are the problems? What are the challenges around this? And then how can our company bring our solution to solve these challenges? And so that customer focused development helps ensure that every section, every win theme speaks directly to agency priorities and will be meaningful to them. And then finally, one of my favorite things that we have for color team reviews is I have a checklist. So obviously each review has its own purpose. Pink team is making sure the solution's on the right track. Red team, you got a 75% draft, and gold team should be evaluated like it's being evaluated from evaluators perspective. I just said evaluator so many times. But so like I said, for each of those reviews, we have guides of checks. Yes, this is what you're looking for in the review. For example, in peak team, I don't want to come back with a bunch of grammar and formatting comments. We'll worry about that at gold team. Right now, I just want you to check the feasibility of our solution. And then we also have a proposal schedule template. This is actually on our SharePoint site for each proposal that we have, that has every critical task tied in with the time frame. So for example, it has the day the RFP dropped. It has the date that we're setting up all of the templates and parsing out the RFP for review. It has the day and time you need to put your pens down for red team review. It has the period in which the draft is in pins down for the reviewers. It has the debrief. It has the recovery period. It has all of the pricing milestones, all of the key personnel recruitment milestones, all in one consolidated place. And then finally, some sort of quality control assessment framework to make sure you have objective criteria for measuring proposal readiness. This could just be a consolidation of checking all of your color team review checklists to make sure that you are matching up with everything that needed to be evaluated. And remember that these things are all, this is a lot. So it's really just about taking what you can, one or two things here or there, and being practical with it and finding out how to infuse it into your process. It's not necessarily about doing extraordinary things. It's doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, is what I like to tell my team. So let me go to the next slide here. So I'm not going to read this. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example of everything that we talked about in theory. So this is the before. If I look at this, I'm like, oh, this is a huge wall of text. I don't want to read this. It's making some generic claims. There's no evidence in this. And then if I go to, oh, I think I had this, sorry. There's no clear connection to the agency mission. It's not addressing the requirements. It's using very passive voice. It's just not interesting to look at, and it's not interesting to read either. But if you look at this, it's kind of more visually appealing. Obviously, all this data is fictitious and made up, and I just left some placeholders here to make it all fit on a slide. But you can see it's very easy to digest. The heading structure lets you know exactly what you are going to read about. Here's your challenge. Here's our solution. Here's how we'll implement it. And here's the results that you're going to have. Here's a call out box of, risk could be a challenge. Here is how we will mitigate that risk. So it's just a more visually appealing and a more content compelling way to tell your story. So like I said, there's a clear heading structure. It's customer focused. You've got a strategic call out. You've got tables mapping the solution to the RFP requirements. There's specific metrics. It's directly compliant with this fictitious RFP that I made. It's active voice, and you're using appropriate white space and visual organization to prevent reader fatigue. All right, so we talked about a lot of things, and I talked pretty quickly. So let me just say thank you so much for your attention and your engagement today. Remember, the journey from errors to excellence is continuous. Even the best proposal teams will regularly reassess their process and look for opportunities to improve. For me, I am doing this quarterly. Every quarter, at the beginning of the first week of the quarter, I pull out our processes. I think, okay, where can we make this better? Where is there room for improvement? So as you return to your proposal efforts, I want to encourage you to think about three things. So first, think about what common errors you think are most impacting your proposal submissions. Find one transformation strategy this week that could answer that, and then measure the impact on your next proposal. And then finally, remember to give yourself some grace. We talk about all of this like it's common knowledge, but really proposals are hard and they take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and not everyone can do it. So remember to be kind on yourself. While you may be doing something well, there is always room for all of us to improve. And with that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. You could put them in the chat too if you're shy. Oh, I see a hand up. Yes, Savannah.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I was curious what your thoughts are on finding the balance between action headings and just using the headings from the instructions or evaluation criteria. My go-to strategy is to just use the RFP language so the evaluators can very easily map it back. But I know there's a lot of discourse about, making them action forward. So that would require a little bit of modification. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on finding that balance.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think it's first and foremost, compliance, right, is the most important. So at a minimum, if you're going to use an action heading, I would just make sure you put in parentheses RFP or PWS 3.1 or whatever. My preferred way to do it, because I like to think of the table of contents as a compliance checklist, is I'll do the standard like RFP heading, and then in just like bold italics underneath it where it's not tying into this table of contents, I'll put the action statement. So it's almost like a caption to the heading, I guess. That does take up a little bit more room, but I think it helps with compliance.
Love that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions? Oh, I see something in the chat. Hang on. I'm also interested in your win theme template tactical information. Yes, I can share that. I can email that to everyone after the webinar. Actually, let me make a note of that real quick because I'm traveling today, so I will send that out on Monday when I get back. Tactical win theme development. Okay, got that note to myself. So yes, I'll be sure to get that to you. Okay, how granular your checklists are, how far do you drill down, and how scripted are they? So I have two versions. So, well, it depends on what checklist you're talking about. If you're talking about a compliance checklist, I have the high level executive leadership version, which you could think of as like your first or second level headings. And then for the writing team, I have an extremely granular checklist that goes all the way down to the statement of work. If you're addressing statement of work 3.1, you want to make sure you address 3.1.1, 3.1.2, 3.1.3. And I can definitely send the color team review checklists too. That one is, I would say, it's granular in the sense that I'm making sure it has every single thing that I want covered in that review, but it's also not daunting. Like I try to keep each bullet to like 5 to 7 words each on what they're checking off. Color team review checklist. All right, any other questions? Great. Thank you all so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you so much. That was really great information, Jenna, and we really appreciate you being willing to come and speak to our members today. For anybody that missed the announcement at the beginning, we will do an offline drawing for a $25 gift card of your choice for attending this meeting. We appreciate everyone's time and attention, and we hope you have a great weekend. We can give you a few minutes back to get your Friday started.
Perfect. Thank you. And Rachel, I will send you all of those templates on Monday when I'm back to my office, and you can distribute them to the attendees if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.